Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here today for another big video. First in a while, actually. This last year I kind of fell into a rhythm which usually leads to videos around 15 minutes long, but not today. Today, we finally take a look at the city at the center of the world, Absalom. Just like when I took a look through the Magna Expanse, there was going to be a lot of information today. Though this one will end up being one video, since there's not a clear way to divide the districts. It's going to be a long haul, so let's get started. First, history. We start talking about Absalom by talking about Eridan. You heard the story before, last Azlanti, Starstone, so on, so on. To reach the meteor, he rose the island, then opened it up for his followers. He also created the Starstone Cathedral, which protected what he believed was his from everyone else. During this time, he ruled while setting alongside his people, including turning back the first of many sieges against the city. However, Eridan became bored, and left the city to its own devices, though he did leave behind the founding laws of Absalom to guide them. As their connection with foreign powers grew, and they turned back invasions like the Pirate Siege, the foundations of the city, its walls, and its sewers began to be produced. The reborn rebellion would increase the spending of the nobility, but this in turn led to pride and excess. It also led to rivalries between nobles, them accusing each other of political sabotage. And in some cases, they are right. Which brings us to our first side tangent of the night, the part of the show where not all conspiracy theories are mercilessly spread by those who hate science and losing. This week, we look at an Azlanti deity who plagued early Absalom, Ulan the Web. Ulan was a mystery, to the point some of his followers did not even believe he was the one giving them powers, which worked for him. He was a deity unknown in the light, but one whose name always came up in the dark as a way to understand the actual truth of the world, to see the threads of the conspiracy's webs. This, in turn, led to some issues down the line. You see, their faith managed to figure out Agolthos were controlling Azlanti from the shadows, and as a way to creep back into the shadows, the aberrations brought about Earthfall. Ulan would exist until the time of early Absalom, continuing as a guardian of the intrigue between noble houses, until the rise of Norgabur, where whispers of the old Azlanti deity mysteriously ended. But, as said, during what is referred to as the Age of Excess, the nobility thought themselves peerless across the world, and the rise of Norgabur only increased their vanity. Eventually, the foreign governments who patroned the island were the de facto rulers of it, with the nobility in their pockets and the passage of what are now known as the proxy laws. It was during this excess that Cain and Kaelin drunkenly stumbled his way to godhood. But eventually it was the Archlords who founded the Arcane Meridium who revolted against these excesses with the Conjured Siege. They were defeated like all others before them, but opened up revolt against the foreign rulers, which eventually led to them leaving Absalom alone after they had virtually emptied the treasury, of course. Absalom stumbled on for centuries until the Shining Crusade and Iomedes' ascension afterwards allowed him to again walk on the world stage. Absalom again became obsessed with their glory, and began sending virtue corps to interfere in every crisis in the Inner Sea region. That was until these corps led to two major sieges in retaliation, the Red Siege and the Siege of the Ravenous Raja. So Absalom stepped back, but still emphasized the glory of adventurers, especially with the rise of the Pathfinder Society. And then Eredin died. Because every story in Pathfinder needs to have that sentence somewhere. After Primarch Sabe's corrupt rule while trying to keep the city in balance after the deity's death, the adventurer Lord Gear of House Grix worked to put the city back together, and found himself as Primarch in return. However, after 30 years of rule, he slowly began to withdraw from the public eye, leading to his full disappearance during the attack by the newly freed Whispering Tyrant. Which brings us to the end of First Edition. The main government of the city is the Grand Council, made of a High Council and a Low Council. The High Council is the council charged with the needs of the entire city. Their main power is to appoint the Primarch, the head of state of Absalom, and the person who can make sweeping decisions, with them having the Primarch's ears, as well as are in control of major departments of their own. The Lower Council is made of 49 members elected to their positions by the populace, and are charged with bringing the people's voices to the councils, and sometimes the Primarch's, ears. The founding laws also set forth 4 law lords, who are in charge of the city's judiciary, 4 spell lords who are in charge of all the city's magic, as well as several other departments. Of course, nobles and military have their sway in the day-to-day politics as well. Currently, with the Primarch missing, there are groups pushing for who they believe should be the inevitable replacement. These divisions have formed 3 parties: the Optimates, New Absalom, and the Citizens League. The Optimates are the traditionalists, who want nothing changed, mostly supported by the nobles, Abadal's church, and the most powerful crime families in the city. You know how it works. New Absalom is more concerned with traders over nobility. They want it to increase the land taxes and reduce trade tariffs, and to ensure they have more of a say, they want more elections. They are also explicitly against Norgobur because God of Thieves. New Absalom has the backing of the Arcane Millennium, the largest magic school in the city, as well as a few other nobles, and some up-and-up trading organizations like the Aspis Consortium. Finally, the Citizens League is mostly made up of the workers and those who also want government reforms, if maybe more sweeping. They, however, do not feel comfortable with the cult question. After all, you ban one religion, which other ones are you going to try to ban? This makes the cult of Norgobur one of the biggest supporters of this faction, as well as the Firebrands and a few more libertine nobles. Some more odds and ends before we move on to the city's specifics. The city is made up of a variety of architectural styles. Many are imported from outside nations, whatever was popular at the time, of course, from Taldan to Assyrian, to Vudranian Tian, to Castrovel and Cheliax. Absalom has also had its own unique architectural style from over the years, it evolving as the city has, and certain designs have become more popular. I wish I could spend more time going through all of them, but already dealing with a bit of a crunch with everything else we are talking on today. I'm definitely going to do travel guide episodes one of these days to cover topics like this, but not today. For guilds, we have a few examples, like the Bakers' Union, the union fighting to ensure bread is never taxed. The Barristers' Guild, who keep a vault of all contracts in the city. The Courtesans' Guild, who know everything, wink wink nudge nudge. The Locksmith Guild, who can get into anywhere. The Street Performers and Actors Guild, who we will be definitely hearing about later. And the Band of the Palm, a front for the Bloody Barbarous Thieves Guild. And that's just a few, of course. Absalom also has many markets as well, The Grand Bazaar and God's Market we will be talking on later, but smaller, more mobile examples include camel markets set up by Qadian merchants visiting the cities. The night market, set up in places where there was enough light to run them 24/7. And the Imperium Impossible, a market in a demiplane with the door in constantly changing places. And as for black markets, well, the Shadowbox network can smuggle in anything. And as for the sea market, well, don't have to pay taxes and tariffs if you never unload a ship. Now I've got the background out of the way, let's begin looking at the city of Absalom. We will look at the districts from order of farthest south to slowly shifting north. This will also have the general effect of poorest to richest, though there are big markets and poor foreign quarters in the central part of town, so it's not going to be precise science. Let's start off the district without inhabitants, the Precipice Quarter. Originally named Baldur's Bluff after a wizard who built his tower there, and full of those who experimented with everything from magic to art. This area was devastated by an earthquake in 4698 AR, which, for those of you keeping track, was 20 years before 2E started. Not only was the area destroyed, not only did half of it end up falling over the cliff, but hidden evils suddenly awakened, filling the area with marching undead, cultists, and other beasts. Only recently have attempts been made to retake and reopen the area. Like in all areas, there are shrines and temples, but these are ones you might want to avoid. The Bone Glutton Pit, a ghoul hotbed and temple to Ogathoa, the Wrecked Rock, the petrified remains of a wreckworm, which are sacred to Rovagug. Fortunately, we have the Spiral Shrine and Virgil's Hope, headquarters of anti-undead forces that also double as temples to Pharasma and Iomade respectively. With the first two of those temples being dungeons, we also have other examples in the area, like the overgrown greenhouse of the Arboretum Arcanus, the haunted carnival known as the Stinger Scar, the Drowned Yard, a schoolyard cursed the instant the earthquake hit, the Dark Gate, a crevice going straight to the Darklands, and of course Beldrin's Tower itself, or at least what's left of it. As for other locations, neighborhoods still stand even if buildings and people do not. Waterfall was the area least damaged and where old residents get by fishing and other tasks. Mordecant is home to intelligent undead, most of them Mordics, who really just want to live their own life. Finally, Rope Cliffs is a vertical area full of caves populated by smugglers. On to the other side of the bay, we have the Puddles district. Puddles was already the city's slums before, but the same earthquake which brought the Precipice Quarter crashing down also rose the water table, leading to this area becoming flooded. People still live here, unfortunately, because rough is rough, and it sucking more does not mean as much if it was already a hard life. So people get by. There is only one member of the district council, Hagen Topknot, who also happens to be the leader of the local watch, the Muckrakers. In case the term slumlord did not automatically rise up in your mind, he also happens to be the leader of the Salvagers Guild, who makes big money off everything found floating in the streets. The only other real power in the district, until recently, was the leader of the local prison, the Brine, which takes full effect of the flooding for its purposes. Recently, as goblins have come to inhabit the city as respectable citizens, the self-proclaimed Goblin King has set up a place for his people in the puddles, murking the waters just a bit. There are two neighborhoods of note: the Little Inner Sea, the center of the puddles where all the water flows in, and the Catwalk Corridors, a rooftop network which is a great alternative to taking boats everywhere. Of course, even if everything flooded, commerce is not dead, with the Carnival of Ace Spear's Astonishing Abyss and the Floating Baroque Bazaar being standouts. And as for temples, while a rundown place like the Puddles would be a place you would expect to have abandoned temples like the Metro Cathedral of Aberdeen or Nethys's Temple of Shadows, there are still a few holy standouts. Believe it or not, this is the location of one of the two grand temples of the dragon god Apsu, as well as the location of the Razor Hall, one of the largest temples of Nogaba's Skin Saw cult. The Puddles is also home to the Temple of the Muta God, a temple for worshippers of someone who may have passed the test of the Starstone. And finally, we have the Drowned Rat, a shrine on a barge, Todsenre, where her worshippers do charity for the drowned streets. Forgive me for just one moment. It's going to be a long video. And in between the two, we have the docks. With how important of a trade city Absalom is, this is one of the major seaports in the Inner Sea region, allowing one to find items from almost anywhere coming in, and ships departing to all across the globe. The Dock Council is the local council, in charge of making sure the comings and goings go on without a hitch. While the local watch, the Crest Watch, put more time into catching smugglers and filling their own pockets than investigating small-time crime like murder. Therefore, colorful gangs of criminals find this place to be their liking. But it is also the area where many members of the Firebrands hang out. The Firebrands have two local chapters: the Bladed Bastards, who are associated with the sideshow known as Besmar's Birdwalk, and the Mithril Cup, who run a local restaurant. Going through locations, best place to start would be way out in the harbor, where Pilot Island sits, the actual southmost part of Absalom. This is home to Absalom Lighthouse and the Harbormaster's Grange, where the harbor is actually run from. For local businesses to support, we have the Concurrent Currency Money Changer, where you can find currency from anywhere, the Pickled Imp Curio Shop, and the Broadfoot Marshal, the local firehouse. But of course it is shipbuilders and haulers who are the most prominent here. For examples of famed shipbuilders, we have the Devil's Own Shipyard, which is connected to Cheliax, and the Sea King Shipyard, creators of some of the finest ships, if but made one at a time. Well, for haulers, we have a bit of a cold war between the cruel Ogrekin Hall and the unionized warehouses of the Lifters Mourn. Finally, shrines can be found mostly on Temple Row, a small religious center for the local gods of the sea. Gazra, Besmar, and Haifeng, each having a temple within this small block. In addition, the local alehouse, the Grog Pit, is also unofficially a shrine to Getting Kalen. And now we move north, directly behind the docks to where most of the trade goods go, the Coins District. This is the place where commerce is key, and therefore where you can find some of the richest traders in Absalom, as well as some of the poorest citizens sitting in the back alleys. One of the greatest sights in the area is, of course, the legendary Grand Bazaar. The local all of them are local markets. The largest market in Absalom. The Coin Council are the local council, which gives them the power to control interest rates and such. But they do most of their meetings in the local dance hall over their own offices, if you catch my drift. The local watch is a token god, probably the most corrupt of the gods, but business is business. In the area known as Mudhaven, on the edge with the puddles, the poor and the criminal elements are concentrated, this being the home of gangs such as the Bloody Barbers, Dodds Filchers, the Family Dogs, the Forthrights, and the Smoke Knights. The last of these worship Norgabur, and have a hidden temple beneath the Mother Sphinx trade house. As for other temples and shrines, the local chapter of the Bank of Abadar has set up a branch shop within the local Hall of Commerce. Also years ago, a giant clockwork temple to Brig, known as the Gallery of Innovation, appeared overnight and is now in competition with the district's Clockwork Academy. The former slave block of the Eternal Shackles has now been rededicated to Caden Kaelin, much to the anger of the followers of Droskar. Step aside from religion for just a bit to mention other places of interest. The Guiding Hand Soup Kitchen is made up of followers of Findala Laura. I actually believe I said that right on the first try for once. As well as other places like the Saucy Ranch and the Second Labyrinth being Find Heavens. Finally, this is also the location where you'll find a home of Nuar, the King of the Minotaurs. Now, we do not have time to go through all the factions in the city today, but we have already heard of some like the Firebrands, the Apis Consortium, and the Pathfinders. But allow me to do a quick side tangent, our second of the day, to talk on an organization I would not have a chance to cover otherwise, the Bloody Barbers. They are currently the most powerful thieving guild in Absalom, said to have gotten their start when the Barbers in the Puddles rose up against the corrupt guards of the district. Today they are in control of every barber shop in the city, along with the band of the Empty Palm, giving them control of junk dealers, chimney sweeps, coal carriers, bathhouses, etc. Every criminal organization has their specialties, and the Bloody Barber specialties are burglary, fencing, narcotics, and their famous Crimson Shave. The current leader of the organization is Dr. Skull, a troll turned alchemist who provides concoctions to his guild mates and runs the organization from the shadows. In the current political wars, the Bloody Barbers side with the Optimates, both in order to keep their position in as top dogs of the underworld, as well as in order for Dr. Skull to one day be able to step out of the shadows and attend operas and read scientific theses, as any normal person can. Next on our possessions, just east of the coins, is Eastgate. This is what one would consider the middle class area. Everyone's secure but not too wealthy. Streets are clean, general happiness. For those who grew up in places like the docks or the coins, Eastgate is a good place to retire. They even have a nice rivalry with another area, Westgate. The Eastgate Council works to keep things peaceful, and the Post Guard are kind of lax, the Gateway Guard being one of the least used, and the least useful to invaders since it is the one always locked. Which leaves maintaining order not to them, but the Concerned Citizens Union, the PTA on steroids, whose focus and petition against things which just do not fit in their polite neighborhood. Which, considering the district recently observed the Greenridge District, home of the farms inside the walls and parks of druidic activity, there just happen to be some nature cults which do not look right in their neighborhood. The greatest landmarks in the area, one of them, is the Blue Tower, the third tallest building in the city, with of course the first being Absalom Lighthouse. The Blue Tower was originally built by by Talons during the era foreign nobility were in control of the city, and while some wall watchers now commandeer it, they are said to be a secret hidden somewhere within. The second highest building in the city is also here, the Watchtower, built along the Greenwich area as a way to first spy anything coming in from the Kinglands. There was also a few schools in this area, the oldest being Endrion, while the Televat School is known for its many famed alumni. But as for shrines and local cults, the Antler Lodge sits in the Greenwich area, a classic temple to Aristotle in the farmlands. Mama Shrewd Solutions tests the city's policy on religious freedom by openly being a shrine to Loremaster. As for cults, we have two separate ones for Gazra. The children of the spring cult who live in the park, and the more traditional druidic followers who gather around the giant tree known as the Old Holt. Water break. Been so long since I've done 20+ minute videos. Anyway, next up, since we did Eastgate, it's only fair to do Westgate next. Westgate is an area the citizens happily admit is stuck in the Mithril Age, the Age of Wonders, where everything seemed possible. And so this district, which is filled with those of old money and those who aren't quite nobles, happily embrace Absalom's golden, Mithril Age. To other areas of the city, the politics and Western Council are more conservative, and it can be funny seeing the Sally Guards dressed in outdated military wear. But it cannot be said that they have not done a fine job defending one of the busiest gates in the city, the Sally Port. Some businesses you will find in this area include Absalom's Courage and Dispatcher, the local home care doctors, the Field Stripe, the shop which sells all things badges, because badges are in, the Scion Noble Agency, private eyes for all your needs, the Windarium, a small shop of all things clockwork, the Westgate Heritage Museum of all things Westgate history, the Groggy Froggy Tavern, To Eat the World, a restaurant of dishes from all across Galorian, and the Guild of Wonders, a sideshow which everyone knows is actually the front for the local assassination business. For shrines and temples, of course the conservative district would have a temple to Tureg, not like the rest are going to live elsewhere. There is also the House of Seven Faces, which is mysteriously connected to Desna, though no one knows truly the purpose of the mysterious seven-faced statue. Final mention of this area goes to the Tomb of the Living. While outside it appears to be an old tomb, it is actually a secret prison for people that many of the city believe are better off forgotten, instead of the trouble they would have caused by advancing, like those who actually might pass the test of Starstone, or those who know too much of the dark corners of the city. Between Westgate and the Coins is the Foreign Quarter, the area where immigrants to the Inner Sea region or away from their homes in the Inner Sea region. The Foreign Quarter Council is formed of representatives of various other governments who want to make sure that their people are treated well, and the Sleepless Suns work around the clock to alleviate any tension which arises between the different groups, or with immigrants and locals. This is most famously the home of the Pathfinder Agency, who I will not be talking about today. No way I can cover them in this video without it being incredibly brief, so. Anyway, best way to do this. We have the Devil's Garden, which is home to Chelish nobles who do not want anything to do with the Thurns. The Embassy of New Tassalon, which hosts rooms for both of the competing kingdoms, by the way. 5 Fire Pavilion, which is both a market and a home for goblins in the city. A Tuvian district which houses the famed House of Shade and Grace, which is a taste of their home. Lion Square for Talar nobles either connected to the Church of Senre, or who are not a fan of the new queen. Little Leogan and Yemhasin for those who escaped the Eye of Arbendago. The School of North Song and Wind, which is a branch school of the Magambia. And of course, Tian Town, where refugees coming over the millennium whenever another kingdom rises or falls. Temples and shrines are also connected to certain immigrants. The large Fudrani Dysphoria building the stadium known as the Irorium, and Arcadian visitors helping build the Seal of Kazutul to give visiting brothers and sisters a mind of home. Now taking another step north, we find ourselves in the center of Absalom, both figuratively and literally, the Ascendant Court. This is the location of the Starstone, and where Eredin built Starstone Cathedral when he saw how people coveted it. This area is typically filled with those who are the hopeful, those who proclaim that they are going to be the next to attempt to test the Starstone. They build a place on the Avenue of the Homeful to have a temple for themselves, purchase items from the gods' market said to help improve their chances, and party it up until the day they attempt the test. Of course, there have only been 3 to pass the test, and untold millions who have not even made it across the pit surrounding the cathedral, to the point there's a tavern specifically made to have a front row seat whenever one falls. The district council, the Chamber of Ecclesiastics, is made up of the heads of various churches and always led by a Vudrani who worships multiple deities, all in order to ensure that no one faith is favored. And the local watch, the Grey Cloaks, are filled with atheists, so they are never swayed in their judgment by something as simple as faith. The main temples in the area are, of course, devoted to the 4 who were risen to godhood by the Starstone, all set around the ring of the pit. The Tellus Embassy was once a temple to Eredin. The Blackfinger Temple being the only legal recognized temple of Norgabur, which is why most of his followers actually meet under the costume shop, the Black Mask. Caden's Hall is the tavern where he drank the night before taking a test of the Starstone, now greatly expanded. And finally, the 7th Church of Iomade is built where Iomade committed her 7th great act, turning back ghouls attacking Absalom. Other temples include the Bank of Absalom around for Abadar, the Church of Asmodeus, the Gorum Arax, a Colosseum devoted to Gorum, the Pleasure Saloon of Calistria, the Temple of the Shining Star of Senre, and the Tower of Twin Truths for Nethys. And special mention to the Shrine of the Fallen, a monument to those who failed to test the Starstone. Now, while we are on the Starstone, let's take the third side tangent to remember the fallen who we have lost. Demorin, god of sacrifices, who convinced Edders to sacrifice everything for him. Gabu, the speaker of the bountiful sea, the Alzinkedi who surfed across the chasm, still sometimes heard on the waves. Malag, the god of rot, and Pollock, god of spoiled food, who both tried crossing the chasm using rotting material. Mabali, goddess of foresight and planning, who crossed despite her temple not being finished on schedule. Ogo, master of the 16 poses, who looked fantastic as he fell to his doom. Penele, goddess of comedy, who fell into the chasm because it was funny. Sir Reinhardt, god of chivalry, who left the Mendevian crusade in order to come back as a god. Slimor, lord of blades, a champion of the Eroium, who thought too highly of himself. Speculasta, goddess of hallucinations, who drugged the audience as part of her crossing the chasm. Thalde, goddess of explosive alchemy, who, unsuccessfully, shot across the chasm with a cannon. Velich, the unwanted, appropriately still worshipped as the god of failure. Yepiari, maker of clouds and tornadoes, who caused great destruction in order to get money. Zimpar, god of screaming fear, who certainly lived up to his name as he fell. And of course, the muted god, who may have failed, but may have succeeded. Being a god of science kind of makes such things debatable. So rest the fallen, and so the hopeful still march. But back to our own march. Directly above the West Gate and foreign quarters, we have the Ivy District. I was about to say Ivory. This is a district where arts flourish, mostly in the form of plays and music. The Ivy District Council is led by Alan Always, the leader of the Street Performers and Actors Guild. His only concern is that the only performances done are those he approves of, and passes laws accordingly. This has led to the Thistler Guard mostly arresting those performing without a permit, as opposed to other crimes, leaving the local Brotherhood of Abadar to pick up the pieces. The centerpiece to the district is the White Grotto, the most prestigious bardic college in Absalom, where plenty of hanger-ons come to join, or shake hands with someone soon to be famous. For places to be part of the scene, you could try eating at Alessia's, the Bloom Cabaret, the Golden Serpent, or the Gutless Griffin. Glass-blown art Crystal Creations is stunning. And of course, who could forget the Ivy Playhouse itself? And for local temples, what is trendier than Sanray's House of Healing, the Shrine of Salin, and the Vault of Abadar? Or, Tempest, the night house connected to a hidden temple of Zod Kuthan. Either way, moving east, we have the Wise Quarter, home not only to various academies, libraries, and places of learning, but also where the Grand Council meets. The Shining Star is of course the Arcamarinium, largest magic school in Absalom, built by the Archlords of Next themselves, only surpassed by the 4-Age logo, where a copy of every book or piece of art which has ever found its way into Absalom is kept to continue to spread as knowledge across the city's citizens. The Wise Council is made to ensure that nothing gets in the way of students experiencing arts and knowledge, and the Learn Guard's first priority is to ensure no knowledge is ever stolen. Other Ivy League schools include the Absalom Academy of Law and the Daltus Academy. Museums include the Absalom Menagerie, a park with magically controlled climate for the enclosed animals, the Balkos Museum of Everything Strange, to the point that Pathfinders need to bail them out every few years, the Avatectona Museum, a museum devoted to all of Absalom, and not just Westgate and the South End, and the Gallery Rosa, a prestigious art gallery. The only temple of note in this area is the mysterious Temple of Silvana. And finally, northeasternmost district, we have the Petal District. This is the noble district, home of the aristocracy, the wealthiest part of town, many able to trace their family tree to the ascension of Eridan himself. Here, extravagance is the name of the game. To the point, a head butler for a house usually gets paid as much as a wealthy merchant elsewhere. Run by the Conclave of the Flowers, and protected diligently by the high-paid Lotus Guard, there is little to want in this area. Some of the most prominent noble estates to note are the Ancaman estate, home of the First Lady of the Law, Castle Balcros, home of the owners of the Great Occult Offerings, Villamore Manor, also home of the Balcros, this as their hunting lodge, the Mark Palace, the single richest house due to the trade monopoly of the Kalish, Palace Orzats, where wealthy meets the greatest thinkers and explorers of the world, and Moriel Palace, where the Morilla family set of traps just hoping people try to break in. I need more water. Hopefully that should get me for the rest of the video. Anyway, Absalom's oldest school of magic, the College of Mysteries, can also be found here. Finally, one last pass of temples and shrines. We have the Court of Black Papers, the premier temple to Nogabur's Reaper reputation face, the Aristo Club, where people pretend to be hunters, the Silken Court, where Callistria's courtesans know everything, and 2 shrines devoted to Pharasma, the official Spiral Cross Cemetery and the Tally Wall, where the Morilla family keep track of the number of people killed trying to enter their home. It's also officially consecrated. To round off our view of the city, let's dig a little deeper and examine the Undercity. Absalom has 2 sets of sewers, various old constructions from ages past, and various other dangers hidden below. For dungeons people might be interested in exploring, we have the Lovecraftian maze known as Delirium's Tangle, and underwater caves known as the Labyrinth of Absalom, the secret lost sanctum of Eridan, a temple long abandoned, Pasharana's domain, home of an undead manipulator, the Cobalt-controlled Sewer Dragon's realm, the Vorferone portion haunted by demonic plants, and the lairs of several criminal gangs. Fall's End is a neighborhood for downtrodden, who came down here to escape even the surface. And the Gilman Tunnels is where the Azlanti can move from the sea to their neighborhood in Eastgate. Absalom has 4 gates and 3 keeps. We mentioned the rarely used Postman Gate and the trade and tack-heavy Sallyport. The Kin Gate is in the Petals District, and is converted from one of the early siege castles. The tree that the enemy attacked with now converted into a crane. The Sphinx Gate goes between the Ivy District and the Wise Quarters, the only gate which has never had a single door breached in a siege. The 3 keeps are the Azlanti Keep, the main location of the city's government found in the Wise Quarter, the Fort Tempest on the western shore, and Starwatch Keep on the eastern. Now let's finish up with leaving the city walls. There are several places within the outskirts of the city. Going clockwise, Shoreline is a small fishing village going up outside Fort Tempest and south of the Sally Gate. North of the Sally Gate and south of the Sphinx Gate is the village of Westhold, originally going around a single inn, and now an area mostly dwarven in makeup. Copperwood is directly outside the Kin Gate, home of laborers and Petal District servants. Finally, Dawnfoot is south of the Parsons Gate, the city being the home of the families of those who work at the Starwatch Keep. Their keep even further south. At a place of note on the entire Starstone Islands, or the islands of Korthos and Erin, or whatever you wish to call the entire thing. First, on the island of Erin, we have Escadar. It was once a retreat for Eridan to get away from his worshippers from time to time, and is the location of both the one of the largest Erodionite monasteries, but also Absalom's navy. This is what happens when I do over 30 minutes. The Swallowed Lands are country areas with small towns and big labor. Willowside is center to one of the largest breadbaskets on the island, but is being affected by a mysterious dying known as the Weld. Diobel is the backdoor of Absalom, home of smuggling and the Cortes Consortium. Otari is halfway between Diobel and Absalom, a small village with a mysterious lighthouse. And to finish this off today, let us do side tangent number 4, to take a look at one of the native creatures to the island, the Shuni. It is said that when Arian raised the islands, he specifically made the Shuni to act as companions. These are pupper-people, not dogs, puppers. They do not have a threatening bone in their body. They are just really cute swamp people, spending their time fishing and farming with no real ambition to leave home. Yet technically they are all playable ancestry, but they have only shown up as back matter for one adventure path and have not been expended on since. So, they deserve to be a side tangent. And that is an overview of Absalom, and one of the longest videos to date. Next time we have one more trade hub to investigate, one of the richest nations in the Inner Sea region. I'll see you then.